Hi, I'm Justin Kirk, and in this video we're going to be making this wall monster. So if you haven't already, you can go to the description of the video and you can just download this for free, and you're welcome to use it in your game for free as well. There's no license or anything like that. You're also going to need to download the Fireball PNG file that's in the description of the video. It's going to be used in the VFX graph that's like his attack that you can see right now. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, so here we are. Drag your wall monster and the fireball into your game. Click on the fireball and go to sprite instead of the default. Go to the wall monster, go to the rig, add a create from this model avatar, and then go to the animation, click on moving and change it so it's looping. And then we just want to press apply on this. And then we're going to drag our wall monster into the game. I'm just going to delete the wall monster that I already have. And we're just going to right click this and click prefab unpack completely. I'm going to make my scale 12, and I'm going to rotate him 180 degrees, and I'm going to move him to the wall. Okay, I'm just going to move him up a little bit. On the right here, you can see it's looking for an animator controller. So we're going to right click at the bottom and create an animator controller. We're going to call this wall monster controller 1. And we're going to click on our monster, drag the controller into the animator controller slot. Double click on the controller, right click, create a state, empty. This is the default state, so this will be running all the time. This will be called moving. And then you can go into your wall monster and drag the moving animation into the animation slot. If you've done this correctly, you should see the wall monster constantly moving on the wall. We're gonna just click on the wall monster and we're gonna drag him away from the wall a little bit so he's not like so pressed up against it. Then on the right, we're gonna add some components to our wall monster. So we're gonna click add component, we're gonna add a rigid body. In the drop down, just change this to not have gravity and freeze everything in it. And then we're going to add a box collider. You could use a mesh collider, but I don't believe in mesh colliders. So we're just gonna use a box collider for pretty much everything. So we're gonna drag this like this, and then we're gonna drag this guy up like that, and then we'll drag it down like that. Now I'm putting it a little bit below him because in my game, my attack is pretty low, and I wanna make sure that if I shoot an attack at him, it hits him. Anyway, so let's get rid of this extra one that got added. And now we need to make a script for him. So if we create a C# script, we can call this wall monster tutorial script. And then we can drag this script. We can drag this script right onto him. And then mine created 2, so I'm just gonna remove 1. All right, so if you double click on the script, it will open like this. We can go ahead and delete everything from here. And then we're gonna create 2 game objects. And then we're gonna create 2 cubes in the scene. These are going to represent the maximum left and right distance that he's able to go. So if we right click here, we can create a 3D object. It's going to be a cube. Let's make it 12 by 12 by 12 again. And we're just going to drag it over here to the left to the maximum spot where we want him to be able to go to. Now, you could always use like a raycast or something like that if you don't want to use a cube. This is the easiest way to do this. So this is a beginner tutorial. This is like very beginner friendly. We're just going to use cubes to indicate the max distance that he's able to go. And you could, like, I'm going to probably use this in my real game, but you could technically use a raycast if you were, like if you have obstacles or things that move in the game and you don't want it to just be based on a hard-coded distance. So we're going to call this, we're going to call this left cube. And then we're going to Control C, Control V, or you could press Control D to duplicate it if you want to and move it to the right side and call it right cube. And now we're just going to go to our wall monster, drag the left cube into the left cube slot, drag the right cube into the right cube slot, and then let's go into the script. So in the script, we need a string called direction. It's going to start as left, okay? Then in our start method, we are going to create a float value called RND, and it's going to be a random value. Random value just gets a random number between 0 and 1. So if the random number is greater than 0.5, then we're gonna set the direction to left. And if it's not greater than 1.5, we're going to set the direction to right. When you create an if statement, if you only have one line of code after the if statement, you don't have to put the curly braces. You can leave it without, and it just kind of saves on like some room to make it less crowded or cluttered or whatever. So then we need fixed update. We're going to put a switch into the fixed update. The switch is going to go in the direction. So if the direction is left, we're going to do this, and if the direction is right, we're going to do this. So if it's left, we just want him to be moving to the left. So we're going to do transform.position. It's getting the transform.position. It's going to be -1 because so we're moving this -1 in the x-axis. So if you look at him, you see these 3 arrows, and in the top right, you can see what they represent. So this red arrow is the x-axis. So we're moving him to the left. Now left is negative because the origin is 0, 0, right? So if he's to the left of the origin, that means it's negative. So if you drag him around, you can see the position is negative when we move it this way. And it goes positive if we move it this way. So we'll just leave him here for right now, and then we're going to be setting this to -1. So this means every single frame, if he's going left, he'll be moving -1. You could also create a variable for this number and make it the speed of how fast he's moving if you wanted to change his speed. We're probably going to do that later in the video, so definitely stay tuned for that. But anyway, so if his position... If his position is less than or equal to the direction, the left cube, position dot x. So if his x position becomes less than the left cube position, did I still spell this wrong? Dot transform dot position. Then we're going to set the direction to right. And then it's the same thing. So when he's going right, then we want him to be going +1 every frame. So he's going to be moving over 1 every frame. And then if his position in the x is greater than equal to the right cube that we added to the game, then the direction is going to get set to left. So if we've done this correctly, now he should be animated and he should be moving between the 2 cubes. The boss room spawn there. Okay, so you can see it's working. He's moving back and forth between the 2 cubes, and he's animated. So now we need to create an attack for him so that he can attack while he's doing that. So let's right click at the bottom here, and we're gonna add a VFX graph. So visual effects graph, and we'll call this Wall Monster Attack Tutorial 5. It doesn't matter what you name it, name whatever you want to. So if you don't see VFX graph when you go to add this, you just need to add it in the package manager. So if you go to Window Package Manager, you can make sure this says Unity Registry. So if you click this drop down, you have to click Unity Registry, then type in Visual at the top. You should see an option for Visual Effects Graph, and at the bottom you'll have an option to install it. I already have it, that's why it says Remove for me. So after you've added this to the game, you can just drag it into the scene. And for me, it looks like it spawned at 0, 0, so we're just gonna move it over here. And mine is really, really tiny, but if you look really closely, you can see that it's doing this. Change the order and layer to 5 or a number higher than, because I have this water on the ground that has an order of 2, so it shows above the ground. So I have to put 5, but you might not have to do that if you don't have a floor that is already order and layered above 0. But yeah, so it starts out like this, and then on the right side, there's an edit button. If you click the edit button, it will open up the visual effect graph. And so this is kind of where the magic happens. So let me just make this way bigger. Okay, so this is the visual effect graph. This is, again, this is where the magic happens. So if you click on this local button on the right, this will make the visual effect in world space instead of being local. And this changes all of the things. Now, unfortunately, this put the visual effect back to the origin. So if you wanted to find the visual effect, it's down here somewhere. It's too small, you can't see it, but it's at the origin, okay? So in order to get around this, because we don't want it to be at the origin, we want it to be spawning at the local position, but we want it in world space so it doesn't follow the game object, because we're going to be attaching this. So this is a game object, right? It has a visual effect attached to it. So if we leave this in local space, when you move this, all of the particles will be moved while it's moving. and we want it in world space so that the particles aren't attached to the game object. They're able to fall to the ground, but we want them to spawn where the game object is. So what we have to do is if we click on one of these, we can press space and we can hit set position, and we're setting the position to the local space. So now it's moved it back to where it started. And we've got like these little tiny particles that are not, we're going to replace those with the fireball effect that we created, or that I uploaded to the video as well. So if you go to this at the bottom, let's turn off save, set size over life and set color over lifetime. They can both be deleted. And then at the bottom here, where it says default particle, let's just click on this and type fireball 1. You should have the fireball if you've downloaded it. And then we don't actually want these to be moving, so we don't need to set a velocity. So he's gonna shoot this blob, and then there's gonna be particles that are falling to the ground as it shoots towards like the final location. So we don't need to set velocity. So this will make it all spawn in the same spot. I'm gonna set the size of it to be significantly bigger than what it is, so that way we can actually see it. So that's pretty big. Your scale is probably not this large, so again, make sure you make it a scale that makes sense. Make sure the position is being set as the first thing, and then the lifetime can stay like that, that's fine. And then we need to change the color. So actually, hang on, let's set the gravity first. So in the update particle, if you press space, you can set the gravity, and this basically makes the particles fall towards the ground. So then when we move this attack around, you can see that it's like dripping kind of deal. Okay, so now we need to set the color. So sometimes what you can do in the VFX graph is if you press space here, you can set color over life. Now, we're not going to use this because this will set the entire particle to this color. So let me show you. So if I create a key here that's green, for example, and I make these all green actually, different colors of green, you can see that all of the detail for the fireball is lost. So if you look at the fireball, I don't have it open anymore, it looks like, hang on, wall monster tutorial. If you look at the fireball, there's a lot of detail on fireball, right? Like it's not just a blob, there's like lines and like different shades of white on it, right? So if you just leave it like this, you can't see any of the detail for the fireball. So we're not going to do that. That's not the way that you can do this. You're able to use a shader in the output particle quad, and that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and dock this at the top here, and we'll click save, and then we'll right click at the bottom and create a shader graph, and it's going to be a lit shader graph, and we're just going to call this wall monster attack tutorial 5 shader graph. Yeah, that's an appropriate name. Anyway, so if you double click on this, and you can see at the bottom it says support VFX graph. If you don't select this, it won't show up in the options in the VFX graph. Turn off cast shadows, we don't need that. And then we just need to change this to transparent. Otherwise we'll see like the box around the fireball, like the black box, and we don't want that. So if we right click here, we can create a node, and it's actually, let's just drag the fireball here. This will, so if you drag a picture, like a sprite, into your shader graph, it will automatically make a sample texture 2D, which is what we want. And then we can right click up here and we can create a gradient. Now, unfortunately, we can't edit the gradient in the inspector yet. I'm hoping that someday they'll allow people to edit the gradient in the inspector, but for right now, you're gonna have to change the color in the shader graph in order for it to get applied. So we need to drag the alpha of the sample texture 2D into the time node, and this gets the details back. And then we also need to drag the alpha from this into the alpha output, and then we need to drag this into the base color. So if we save this right now, you can see that now there's some detail added. Now we haven't changed the gradient yet, so it looks just all one color. So let's change the gradient. So if we click on this, we want the outside of it to be like a darker green, like that. And then this one can also be a darker green. And then in the middle, we're gonna make it a light green like this. And then right about here, we wanna make it a green and turn up the intensity to like 3.5. So if you've done this correctly, you can see that like the outside of it's like a darker green, and then the inside is like the glowy green color. Pretty much all of my gradients, this is like the format that you're gonna wanna use for your gradients pretty much always. Like if you're using a sprite to get the middle of it to be the color that you want, this is like the middle right here, and then this is like, I don't know, this is how I kind of always set it up. So let's save this and let's go back to the scene. And oh, we didn't apply it. Okay, so in the actual output particle quad at the top, there's a shader graph slot, and we can choose Wall Monster Attack Tutorial 5 shader graph. If you save this, you should see this green magnificent blob. Now, if you want it to be a little bit more glowy, you can play with the intensity and the gradient. You can change the gradient colors to whatever you want them to be, right? That's up to you. So back in the tutorial, the VFX graph, we actually want to add the size over lifetime back. So if we click on this, we can press the space bar and we can just type in size. Hang on. Set size. Oh my god, spell it correctly. Set size over life. And the graph that we want is like this. So it starts at 1. And then let's get rid of this middle vertex. We don't need it. And then we just want to maybe move this up to like half the size. We don't want to go all the way down to 0 because that's too much of a difference. So what this will do is this will make it start big and then get smaller. So like the size of the particle will be shrinking as it shoots. So let's see that. Now this really reduced the size of the particle, and the reason why is because if you click on this on the right, it says overwrite. You need to change this to multiply so that it multiplies by the size that we already set it. It's not size 25 anymore. If it's overwriting, it will be only 1, and that's why it's so small. So now we can see that as it's dripping, the bottom ones are smaller. And then this is not enough particles. This is only like 5 particles or something. We're gonna make this way more. So let's make this 100 for now. And then we're gonna make the size of this 3000 for right now. And we're gonna save it like that. So when you move this around, you can see that it's like kind of dripping the particles. Now, if you wanted to go towards the ground faster, you could turn up the gravity, like to make it the minus number of the gravity less. But this is really cool for like an attack effect. And this is how I made the fireball as well. I'm just reusing this. I actually really like this drawing that I did. It's really good, just like for a default kind of particle that I'm using. It's pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, so you could play with these numbers, make it however many you want, like particle spawn rate. And yeah, so what we need to do now is let's minimize the visual effect. And we're just gonna set, so we need to add a sphere collider to this. Set the center of this to 0, 0, 0, so it's directly in the middle. Set the radius to 15. Mine's gonna be 15. Like I said, my scale's really large. Yours might not need to be that big. You might need to use way smaller numbers depending on how like your game is set up. So yeah, so I mean, like I said, this is looking really cool. So let's go ahead and add a script to this. So create a new C# script. Okay, and then we're gonna call this Wall Monster Attack Tutorial 5 script. And we're gonna drag this script onto, oh my goodness, it's already added. Okay, so drag the script onto the attack, and then if you double click the script, it will open it. So basically what we want to do is we're going to create a linked list, and we're going to make that of vector 3, and it's going to be called previous positions. So the reasoning for this list is when it's moved. Okay, so visual effects graph doesn't have collision like the particle system has. So we have no way of determining whether your character has walked in to, we have no way of determining if your character has walked into the trail. So like when this is moving, like when he shoots it, it will leave a trail behind it, right? And we want to make it so that when the character gets hit by the, like if he walks into the trail, it should damage the character. He shouldn't be able to walk through it without getting damaged. So the sphere collider on this could hit your player and damage it. So, and we're gonna set that up too. So like on collision enter, if the collision name, collider.name is stickman wizard, then it does damage to the player. So effect interaction player hit, I think player take damage maybe, and then it can be the transform position. So this is a method that I have in my game to damage my player. You won't have this. You have to, like if you have a player, you're gonna have your own damage script. We're not doing that in this video. So if you don't have a damage script for your player, you can skip this and you don't have to add this. But this will make it so that if it collides with my player, it will damage the player. But this doesn't handle the case where if the player walks into the trail of the VFX graph, it will damage the player, and we want that, right? So the next thing we're gonna add is the fixed update, and basically we're gonna create an integer here, and it's gonna be I, And if I modulus 5 is 0, so every 5 frames essentially. So modulus is like if I is 0, this would be true. If I is 5, this will be true. If I is 10, this will be true. If I is 15, this will be true. So every 5 frames essentially. I'm not going to go into what modulus is. You can, if you don't know what it is, you can go look up the math on Google or whatever. But just know that every 5 frames this will happen. So we want to create an overlap sphere to check if the player is in it. So every 5 frames, we're going to add something to this linked list. So we'll do previous positions dot add first, and then it's going to be transform dot position. After 60 frames, so hang on. If I is greater than 60, maybe this better be 30. Then we want to remove the last position. So the reason we're using a linked list instead of a normal list is because the linked list has this wonderful method where you can add first and you can take away from the last, or you can add last. So you can add to the first and the last. It has a built-in method for it, and the regular list doesn't have that. So you could use remove at 0 or whatever. It might even be better performance, but I like this better. I don't know why. But anyway, so instead of doing add first, we're going to do remove last, and then we don't actually need to do anything in this. What this will do is, so every 5 frames we're going to add a position to our linked list, right? And then we're going to remove, after 30 frames have happened, we're going to remove the last thing. So the last thing was added. We should be doing add last and remove first, but it doesn't matter. So basically what this will do is the trail, as it's moving along, will be getting added and removed. So let me just kind of demo this in this so that it kind of makes sense. So if we click on this, while this moves around, this will create it will memorize the positions that it's been, but the ending position will be getting removed after 30 frames, so that, like, because eventually this position will disappear before this ball disappears, so that it will I'm going to show you with a gizmo that will make it a lot easier to understand. So let's do that. So on draw gizmos for each vector 3 v in previous positions. We're gonna draw a sphere so the center of the sphere is gonna be V, and then the radius, we're gonna set that to 15 for right now. Actually, let's set it smaller. Let's make it 9. Okay, and then we also have to make this shoot. So he doesn't have anything to shoot this attack yet, so we need to turn this into a prefab. So if we drag this here, we can make this into a prefab, right? And then we can just save our game because, yeah, Unity crashes sometimes. And then we need to make this prefab into our code for our wall monster. So we're just going to call this attack prefab. And then we want to attack at a random time, so we're going to do the same thing. So int I is 0. Oh, also for this, we need to increment I every frame, so I++. If you don't do this, then this will never trigger and nothing will ever happen. So actually it will always trigger because it's 0, and 0 modulus 5 is 0. So anyway, so we need to increment I here as well. And what we can do is, if I modulus random range between 50 and 200 is equal to 0. So this will really randomize when he attacks. So if I modulus this random range, because every frame, this will be a different number. So it'll be a number between 50 and 200, right? So this could take a little while before he attacks, or he could attack a bunch of times in a row, and it makes it really, really random. So this is a great way to random when this is gonna happen. We need to get the animator as well. So we're gonna get public animator A. So then back in the game, we can delete this attack out of our screen, by the way. We don't need that anymore. So we want to put the animator for the monster into here, and then the attack prefab that we made can go here. and then we will save this. So then if this happens, we want to set a trigger to attack inside of the animator controller. So back in the animator controller, we're going to create a new state, and it's going to be called attack. We need to take this attack animation outside of our monster prefab and paste it here. It's read-only by default, so if you don't do this, you won't be able to create an event. And then if you're not seeing a list like this, if you're just seeing it like this, you can drag this draggy bar to the left and it will make it into details view, just like in Windows. Yeah, so drag your attack outside of the monster, and then if you double click on the attack, it will open up the animation. We want to put an event for when he attacks. So if you click this little thing here, you can create an event and just drag it over to where you think he attacks. I think it's probably around here, or it might be here. You might have to play with this spot after, but this isn't called an event. So the function that's going to happen is attack, and the script that it's going to happen in is, let me just make this smaller, hang on. Wall monster tutorial script. So wall monster tutorial script. So at 12, sorry, it's not 12 seconds, 1.2 seconds into the animation, it's gonna do this method in this code. This is the best way to manage when your monster attacks. So if you go in here, we just need to make a public void. It has to be public or else it won't work. And just call it the same name as the thing that you named it here. Okay, so this method will get called at this position, at this event in this animation. So 1.2 seconds into the animation, it's gonna do this attack. So the attack is gonna spawn this prefab that we've made of our attack. So instantiate, and then we just have to call it that. And then the position is going to be transform.position plus transform.position.forward times 20, and then quaternion.identity. Did I miss something? What am I missing? Oh, you don't need position here. It should just be forward. So the reason so this is the position of the monster, because this script is attached to the monster, right? And then forward is in front of the monster, so we're adding the front of the monster to it, and we're multiplying that by 20. We could put this in brackets. We don't want the ball to spawn directly on top of the monster. We want it to spawn in front of the monster, so he shouldn't be shooting it like directly from like inside of him. It should be like in front of him to start. And then we need to assign this to a game object. So game object attack. Maybe don't call it the same thing as the method, just call it attack lowercase or something. And then we can get the rigid body for the attack. And then instead of velocity, we can do add force. We're gonna add transform.forward times 100. And then the force mode is going to be impulse. And we're just actually, so we're going to do that, but we're also going to add plus new vector 3, and it's going to be 0, 30, 0. So this will shoot the projectile in front of the monster or whatever, right? And then this will make it go upwards. So like instead of it just going directly straight in front of the monster, it will go like kind of curved instead. And that will just make it look way, way better. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna go back into our, we're gonna drag the attack back onto the scene or whatever, right? And we just wanna add a rigid body to this because we're adding force to the rigid body, but if it doesn't have a rigid body, it's not going to work. We want to leave gravity on, so that way it's falling to the ground as it's going. So like we're shooting it up and then gravity will be bringing it back down. So you don't want to do any of the freezing of the positions in this one. And then I think that should be good. So make sure you drag it back on top of the attack tutorial. If you edit it inside of the scene view, it doesn't affect the prefab, and the prefab is where we have to have the rigid body. So let's delete it out of the scene. And yeah, oh, we want to delete this as well. So this will move it, right? but we're creating a game object here, so we want to delete it after a certain period of time. That way it doesn't like stay active. So let's just do game object dot destroy the attack after 5 seconds. So that way it's just like bouncing around for 5 seconds. And then we actually want to do one more thing. So if we bring the attack back into the game, we want to add a physics material to it so it will be bouncy. So let's go ahead and create a physics material, and we'll call this bouncy. And we could just change the bounciness to 1. You can leave the friction the way it is, it's fine, or you could set it to 0 if you want to. But if we just take this bouncy, we can drag it onto the sphere collider. This affects how it reacts when it hits the ground and stuff. All right, so we've got that set up, and then when he shoots it, it should be drawing these spheres for the previous, like at the position that it's at. So because this is going to be moving across the screen, when it's adding these positions, they will be behind the ball. So you're going to see that in a second. Let me turn on gizmos in my game mode. And then I'm going to delete this, drag it onto this to make sure it has the bouncy material, and then delete it. And then you can press play on your game. Okay, this is the wrong room, but it's fine. Parameter attack does not exist. Okay, so that's not good. Let me save this for a second, go into my animation. Oh, right, okay, so in the animator, we haven't even set this up at all. So let's drag the attack into the motion slot of this. And then we need to make a trigger called attack, because that's what it's trying to set. That's why it's saying it doesn't exist. Right click on moving and make a transition to attack. Right click on attack and make the transition back. The moving transition into attack should have the attack condition. So when this trigger happens, it will do the attack. And then this should have an exit time. Set the exit time to 1, change the transition duration to 0. So when it's done attacking, it will automatically go back to moving. You don't need to reset the trigger or do anything like that. When it finishes attacking, it will automatically go back to moving because it only has one path to go in. So when we run this again, it should be working now. All right, so we obviously need way more force. So if we turn off the gizmo here, you can see that it's kind of going across, but we want it to go way faster than that. So yours might be really fast already. I'm gonna put mine to 500. That should make it go blasting across the screen. And then we might need to dial up the number of particles in the VFX graph. We're gonna find out in a second, but we might have to dial up the number of particles. Also, the lifetime of this might be way too long. 5 seconds is like too long. It should maybe just be 2 or 3 seconds. So if I get hit by this, it should damage my character as well. I'll show you. It sends me flying. Okay, so let's, like I said, we're gonna dial down the amount of time that it lives for. And then in this script here, we want to make it so that, so let's turn this down as well, because those spheres were too small, right? So when we walk into those spheres, we want it to do damage, right? So below this, we want to do physics.overlap sphere, and we're just going to do it for all of the positions in the list, right? So we're going to check all of these spheres. If our character is touching them, we're going to take damage. So for each vector 3v in previous positions, we're going to have a collider array C is equal to physics overlap sphere on the V. And then the radius is going to be, we'll just make it 10. It's fine. If, and then we want to go through each collider that it hit. So for each collider C2 and C, that's fine. Let me just Control K, Control F to format this. And if c2.transform.main is equal to stick man wizard, and my player isn't invincible, then we're gonna damage the player. So this one. Okay, so basically we're creating these we're creating a list of all the positions that it's been in, right? And we're removing the very last sphere from the list because like as it's going, these are getting, the size over lifetime is shrinking. So the back ones, they shouldn't hit him anymore. So you can kind of see this in action probably better than anything. So I'm gonna turn gizmos back on so you can see it. So see these dots? Maybe it shouldn't be, so like it should be not deleting them that fast. Also, that might be too long for the lifetime of the particle. So let's go back to this for a sec. So instead of changing this to 2, which isn't what we want the VFX graph to be less lifetime. So the lifetime could be between 0.5 and 1. Or maybe even 0.2 and 1, so that it's not living so long, and that way it'll line up more. And then we want to draw these, so we started drawing these like after frame 30, and maybe frame 15 would be better to start drawing them, so that way there's only 3 at a time, or maybe this should be larger. We'll find it. We're gonna run it and we'll see, but let's see. Okay, let's save this. And also the speed seems like it's a little bit fast, so let's dial this back to 350. Okay, so we need to dial that number up actually, not down. So because it starts drawing after 15, it starts deleting after 15. We want it to start deleting after maybe 60. So that way more of those dots are still there because they're not disappeared yet. So we only, like all of the dots that are visible, we should be able to walk into them and they should damage our player, right? So let's see. Right? So this makes it so that the trail behind this, you can hit it. Obviously you have to mess with the number so that it lines up perfectly, and we could make the size over lifetime go all the way like down more. So instead of it going all the way like only halfway, it could go more. So let me see, hang on. So in our size over lifetime, this could go down to like 0. Not less than 0, it will crash if it goes less than 0. Or, sorry, it won't appear if it goes less than 0. So then let's run this again. Oh, if you're wondering why I keep going in the main room, I have a debug script that puts me into the room that I want to be in, which is that green room. But that debug script only works if that room is spawned. So I have a random map generation, and now I have like 22 rooms, right? So if there's only 15 rooms in the run, it's possible that that room won't even spawn, and if it doesn't spawn, it just ends up putting me in the start room instead. So we can see that this is lining up really good with the attack. We can make these cubes invisible, so that's probably going to be the last thing. It's really cool because like if you walk into it as well, if you hit the front part, it bounces it, which is kind of like, that's kind of awesome. So this turned out really, really good. I'm really happy with this result. He just, obviously he needs to be brought a little bit more forward so that he's not inside of the wall, I guess, for that thing. And then, like I said, you could take these cubes and you could just turn off the mesh renderer, and then when you want to edit it, you could turn it back on so you're able to see it again. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for the day. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe. I'm gonna be giving a lot more assets away like this wall monster, so if you're interested in that, you know, if you subscribe, you'll be able to get those. I think this turned out really, really, really good. If you do get stuck or you're trying to make this wall monster and something doesn't work or something goes wrong, or maybe I missed a step, but it's a really long video, so it's possible that I've missed something, you can join my Discord, and I'm usually here between the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I would love if you guys joined, and you could show me pictures of your game, or you could show me the implementation of your wall monster, or you can just talk about whatever you want to, Unity related. And like I said, I'm usually here from 9 to 5, but that's gonna be it for the day, and I will see you in the next one.